Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the Bauer Hyperlite pad snapshot review. So it's going to be the Hyperlite and comparing it to the 2X Pros and to see what are the big differences there. So this is a demo set. It is not my size. It's a medium compared to normally XL or a large. So I can't really talk about like a lot of things in terms of weight and stuff like that. I don't think weight matters anyways, but regardless, I will have full comparisons of the blocker compared to the 2X Pro blocker, as well as compared to the ultrasonic blocker, and as well as the catching glove compared to the 2X Pro catching glove and the ultrasonic as well. And we do have the ultrasonic pads here too that I will talk about in a comparison between the ultrasonic and the Hyperlite, in case you're not sure which one you should kind of go into. But those will all be in separate videos. This video is just about the 2X Pro pads and the Hyperlite pads. Before we jump into all that, if you like this content, if you think it's helpful, and if you want to see more of it, reach out to the manufacturer. So in this case, it would be Bauer. Let them know this is helpful. This is kind of a challenge for me to get sets like this early enough, and just in general to actually just talk about, regardless if they're like sets to use or not. So please reach out to them on social media, not Bauer Goalie, that's the Bauer, like the Bauer accounts and stuff like that, or through their website. It would be extremely helpful for me because, like I said, getting this stuff is actually difficult. And with that said, if you are in the United States and you're looking to buy hockey equipment, if you click the link in the description to Pure Hockey, Pure Goalie, anything purchased through there will give me a kickback, so help support channels so I can do stuff like this. Otherwise, if you want to support me, check out Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. Links are in the description. So the one unfortunate thing of me having my 2X Pros compared to a retail set and having a retail Hyperlite is that the stiffness on mine are not anywhere close to what the retail one is. So this is a stiff pad. So there's, I think, 5 settings you get: soft, or very soft, soft, normal, stiff, X stiff. This is a stiff, and it's pretty stiff as you can see, and mine are super straight. The new ones are, the new Hyperlite stock is considered the softest version you can get. You can order that in ultrasonic as well, but Hyperlite comes stock at that. So if it was like 1 to 5, this is a 1. These would be a 4. This pad, it's still not super soft. It's still soft. This is, keep in mind that this is straight off the shelf. Like, retail people haven't gone in yet and kind of like shoved this down or anything. This is kind of just how they come. It's softer, but it's still pretty like strong in there. This is still a stiffer core and everything than, let's say, Vaughn's, or like basically Vaughn's, or like Warriors. This is stiffer than my Warriors, but the stock Warriors, it's pretty close to being the same. But it is a lot softer than what they used to be in the past. The other big thing is the core is a lot more curved. So hopefully you can see that. I think if I stand these next to each other, it should give a pretty good idea of how curved this core is. Now, if you don't flex the pad right away, it's still curved, but it's not crazy. You can definitely get a pretty solid curve on these now, as you can see here, and compared to here. I think this is a pretty solid move by Bauer. I had an issue with basically this pad in that there's the difference between this and an ultrasonic in terms of really how they played, or specifically this and a 2S Pro, was too similar. With this curve shape to it and with a softer face, like kind of stock, it makes a lot more sense to me in them having 2 different lines, because these are very different. Now, you can still order this obviously in custom with super stiff and everything like that, but just having this big difference between the two, I think, is a really good move. The other new part of this pad that you can see from this angle is the Stabiliflex block. And that block is obviously this right here. Bauer added this feature in the ultrasonics, where it has basically a piece that comes out here and goes out here. So the flex on this is nothing. And I'll show that in a different view of comparing it to what it is compared to the old ones, or like normal pads. But that's the basis of it. And the idea is when you push down, you have instant reactions. This one is called the Stabiliflex, and it has a bit of movement there, but not a ton. So it does have a little bit of movement out and back. It's a tiny, tiny amount. It's a little bit more than what the ultrasonic was, but it's not a lot. The big thing that they advertise with this though is you're able to flex it this way, and it's easier when you pull this out because it kind of gets in the way. And you can see the pad kind of flex downwards. This I don't think they really did a ton here for this, but all they really did is create a gap here, because the ultrasonic, and I'll show it in that comparison video, can do it too, but you have to move this out of the way and it still moves down. But that's kind of a big change on this pad compared to the 2X Pro, which had just the normal block. And again, we'll do a comparison on the other side, but you can really see it here, and you can really see kind of the gap difference right here of where that flex is, which is always an interesting thing. Looking at the side profile, you can kind of see them standing up here. Again, we'll see this on the other side, but it's pretty similar. It's just a new shape, basically. It's just curved compared. The thickness is basically really, really similar. It's just a new, these ones were pretty straight, and this one now has a stock curve to it. And then finally, boot flex is super soft. As you can see, I'm going to say it's even softer than my 2X Pros, which are fairly soft. This feels like eFlex 5 soft. The boot is just so soft, and it's super bouncy, and I'm happy with what they changed with this, because I really think this is kind of pulling the two lines apart more and making them more unique. Personally, I was a huge Bauer fan. These 2X Pros, I absolutely love them. These work really well for me. There's a few things I wanted different, but overall this pad, there's a lot I love to it. But I like the shape a lot to it. Obviously, this doesn't really translate to the new shape for me, because I like straight pads, but I do like the way that they've gone here in these two very different approaches between what this is and kind of their older vapors, which were blending too close to Supremes. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not important at all. I'm going to cover it just because graphics kind of matter. I think Bauer took a step back with these graphics. Obviously, you can't see anything on these pads, but I'll overlay kind of a mock-up that was done. The reason I think that it's kind of disappointing is just because basically this one piece here, and then having like this piece which just covers this side, and it doesn't, or like right here basically, it doesn't really do much with the rest of the pad, is pretty disappointing. It would have been better if they had like another set. So if it was one piece right here, one here, and then one up here, it would have allowed for, I think, better designs overall. I really liked how you could really separate the 2X Pro graphic and have it was pretty clean. You could have the line across. Obviously, I still think this should have had more zones, but I'm kind of disappointed that this one, they didn't go all out and did a separate zone at the top too, and it was just kind of here, and then the rest. Slightly disappointing for me. I do like the little graphic details they have, like these check mark things or whatever. Kind of interesting. I like how Bauer does that on all their pads. I gotta say though, I really liked the way that it was done on the 2X Pros. This one has really small details in it that you can kind of see. They're like little lines printed into it. It's kind of hard to see because it's all black, but it was kind of the same idea of what is done right here with these little hexagon, or I guess they're diamonds. I like how Bauer does that. I think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of their own thing. CCM has done it recently with the Axis and with the eFlex 5, so I guess they're getting some inspiration from Bauer there. I do also really like the green highlights on the Hyperlite, just like that. And you can see it on the bindings on the back of the pads and the logo here. I think that's a kind of a cool thing. So here is where you can basically see the thickness of the pad. It's pretty similar to each other. Might be slightly smaller in the Hyperlite, but it's not a big difference, to be totally honest. They're both pretty slim pads for that. When we look at the actual strapping system, I guess I'll turn the pads here to make this a little easier for you. Basically, the straps for this one are similar, but in my opinion, not as good. I thought this was one of the best strapping systems Bauer has ever done. The Hyperlites kind of copied what they went here, but they kind of didn't go all the way. Kind of the same thing here. I like how this had the Velcro all the way down, where this one is obviously limited. I'm sure Bauer has numbers of how many people actually don't use down here and don't use up here. That's fine. You could use this up to here instead of down there. It would have just given you a little bit more options. I kind of wish they stuck with that, but they didn't. To me, it's slightly disappointing, just removing a little bit of kind of options that people can have. The knee wing is kind of similar, just a different shape. You can see the new one is really kind of tiny. So it's removable same way. So it still has those 3 spots, 1, 2, 3. So you can move this in, out, or however you want it. This one is on its middle position. So you can also do it on the out position by sticking it there and pushing those backwards instead of forwards. I use mine on the closest one when I did mine, so my knee wouldn't fall off the block, as you can see right there. And I wish Bauer implemented that for the straps right here, the quick tune connector, whatever they're called now. Just that would stick better than the Velcro does, and the Velcro didn't work all that well. The one thing that's totally different, something you kind of have to watch out on, is because of this strapping, you can no longer put the Velcro back here for your knee strap. So the way they adjust it is having a piece like this, as you can see, and it Velcros on like that. Bauer did make, I think they made this piece longer, because I had to adjust this on my ultrasonics. I had to tape it up because I couldn't get it tight enough to keep my knee from falling out of the block. So I like how, I think that's a little bit better. This is definitely shorter than what was on the ultrasonics, because that definitely takes more pull there. So that's a good thing there. I still wish you could just basically do like all of this to be soft Velcro, the attachment point, and it would work and it would be nice. You can also put that down there, or the knee, whatever one you want. The back straps here, same as well. Actually, right now I'm going to call out how nice Bauer straps are again. Everything has like really nice details of leather and like their logo. Same with up here. It's all really nice. They've done that for a while now. And even the tune fit before used to be just nylon. Now it's like a leather piece. So again, nice pieces and nice touches for Bauer there. So I got to give him props. The interesting sort of thing of this tune fit is it no longer runs through this wrap. So you had this wrap before where the tune fit would go here and you would run it through like that. This is, I think, is an XL or XX long strap. I liked them loose. What you could also do is just flip this piece around so it would run on the outside of the strap, so you get a bit looser leg channel if you wanted to. You can't really do that anymore with these because that inner leg channel is basically gone. So you can see how there was this flap here, that's gone now, and you just have this right here, which is basically this piece right here. But what you have in here is this pillow, this balance plate. And this is the most exciting piece of all this gear for me, but we'll cover that in a second. So this strap, as you can see, just pretty similar how the other tune fit worked. I don't know what these are for. I guess it's to tighten this. I guess it's to really crank that, but I'm not sure how that would work. I will have to ask someone. I never noticed until I looked at this. I don't have like the spec sheet on it or what that is or what it's doing, so I can't comment on it at all. I will say you can remove these. There is a little piece right in here. Hopefully you can see that. So you could pull this out all the way if you really wanted to take these out completely, but you can't change kind of how it's sat compared to the old one where it went on the outside of that wing. The big part of this pad is that plate, so I think that's worth the change. Now for the interior of the pad, it's honestly pretty similar in terms of materials. You get a little bit more of this nice it's like a Nash all the way through, but everything else is fairly similar. I'm going to say Bauer did kind of go a bad route here where this was their thermocore. So this stuff is supposed to dry itself off and they have all this abrasion zone, which I really liked. They took that all out and now it is just this backing nylon. This is the same nylon. I think that was on the back of the ultrasonics. It's on the back of there. So kind of disappointing to me that they didn't keep this because this is a great design, great material. I'm going to say this stuff is probably cheaper. It's not going to make a huge difference, and I mean, it is what it is. It's still fine. I will still say I love the Aerolite on the outside now. Bauer's using this on everything. Molded foams are the future. Molded foams are the future. Molded foams. Love it. Like, these are great. This does feel a lot thinner than what this was before, though. Like, this does feel like it was more padded than what this is, which is kind of disappointing, but I mean, it's not a huge thing anyways. I'm assuming they're going for light here, like lightweight, and that's one of the reasons they probably did that. So another part of these pads that is different is the materials of the knee blocks themselves. So this one was their Quattro Nash. Very soft, very comfortable material. It's super smooth to the touch. The new one is basically their equivalent of Sure Grip. It's on the catching glove too. This one, honestly though, feels like it has been really used, and it hasn't at all. So I think this is the material that was used on my ultrasonic catcher versus the one that's actually in the glove, because the one in the glove for this feels better on the hands and is more textured than what this is. So something kind of interesting there. You do have your wear guards here for the actual Velcro points, which I think is pretty interesting. The one thing I cannot talk about with this video, and I'm sorry, is that this set did not come with the tune fit inside it. So I can't talk about that and can't compare it to the really crappy ones in the ultrasonic, which is, it's this piece basically, right? It's the professor strap. I can't talk about that because it's not in here. I'll get a set or borrow something to talk about this in the future, and I'll do another video going over it and why it's much better design. The ultrasonic one was terrible. This one I think is much better from everything I've seen, and it's more closer to the Vons and the Brian's ones than what this was. Unfortunately, like I said, this pad doesn't have it, so I can't do it, and this video will be made a long time before I'll get access to that little piece, so it'll have to be a separate video. Next is the boot, and the boot has been simpled, like made much more simple. You still have your straps right here and right here for your actual boot straps if you want to use it. Obviously these ones don't have it. Sorry for the tag getting in the way. The boot itself is much flatter, and it's, let's be real, it's not, this wasn't a not flat thing anyways, but basically the channel is all gone. So you did have a bit of a like guide here. It's totally flat on the outside, a little guide on the inside, all using leather, which I think is a good idea. Leather is going to wear, or faux leather, it's probably Gen Pro, is going to wear less than what this is. So I really like that they did that there. And that just a flat boot is going to make it easier to seal in post. Just going to sit on top of the skates. Basically, that's what everyone's looking for now, is sitting on top of the skates. Just look at any Lefebvre pad. That's like one of the big things on there. So you can also see that there. I like this design. It's a little less rounded, as you can see. That one rounds off, and this one is a little bit more like squared off, but it's probably not gonna, you're probably not gonna really notice much on there. When I put this on, I didn't notice really anything, but it is tiny on me, so might not totally work with that. I'll just go on the top really quick because I think it's something interesting regardless. I do like the back cover and the whatever this is that they're using now. The cord color I think looks pretty awesome. I'm disappointed the knee pad attachments here, only because that's how I carried my pads, so that makes me a bit sad. And finally, toe ties are just the toe ties. They won't say Monster on them. Bauer got away from that, which is a good thing. And they're just normal toe ties, are fine. Nothing special, nothing crazy, just toe ties. This plate does look like it's been sticks out a little more, and it's a little flatter. You can kind of see how this one's kind of bending inwards, and this one should be hopefully visible, kind of sticking out. Maybe if I go like this, you can see it better. But regardless, that is part because of the pillow and how this is kind of pushed flatter now. Great design by Bauer. It doesn't have that little flip edge, which is on the Ultrasonics. I'll cover that in the ultrasonic video. But this is very similar, but just shortened. And this isn't just the size, like how this is an XL and this is a medium, because you do have to have that gap there, and you can't really get that gap without shortening this. So that's why that was done. To kind of show what that gap does again, this is the Stabiliflex. And with that gap, you can really push down like that. Whereas when it doesn't have a gap, it can't move. Obviously, this pad isn't a Stabiliflex or like the Stability slide on it like the Ultrasonics do, but it's the same idea where trying to flex a pad kind of stop because it would get in the way. Now with that move down, it doesn't get in the way as much. Obviously the block, we have the Stabiliflex here, and what this does is, I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to go over it again just to show it off. There's a piece going in as the core and coming out, and it creates it so this is much stiffer. So I got to put a lot of weight to move that. It goes up and down a bit, but it's much stiffer than what this material is, where it's not going into the face of the pad and you can just move the block like that. You can't do that on this design at all. Like, it doesn't go nearly as much, and it really, the core really holds it in place, where again, this one, you can bend it all the way out. I saw a couple comments that they were disappointed that these little pieces right here are still on these pads. I'm not sure really why people would be disappointed in that. These are for a wear guard. So basically, if this material starts ripping at the boot, which Bauer has had problems with in the past, and people will still say they do, that this boot part material basically rips. This is holding this part here together because this part is a part where it bends a lot. So this is kind of giving added durability there. I think it's a smart move to have that. Again, it's on here too. Same thing. It feels like a little smaller, but might just be the different pad size. It's fine in that regard. The thing that is disappointing to me, and Bauer has obviously gotten rid of the binding here, it's still on the boot since the 1S, and this boot binding, and this is like the only spot that really has wear on this pad, is that boot. As you can see, that binding's wearing out. It's gonna happen on this one too. As you can see right there, that binding. Obviously you have this binding too, which is the same, but that one, like, at this point, I really wish this just folded over more, or do something like they did here, where like you could kind of put the binding on the deep inside and kind of recess it or something to make this go away, or just cover it all the way. It'd be so easy to make this just go all the way up. Like, why isn't that done? You can make it in 3 pieces if you want it angled to. So that's disappointing again for me. I do always like this piece right here, and I like how they added a little flap here to make it flexible. So you can see how that flexes. it's not a flap, but it's basically just a piece sewn in here. So this Aerolite or whatever this material is can flex like that. Because on mine, obviously it doesn't flex. It kind of bends, but it doesn't quite flex as much as the other one. So I'd like them doing that just to have that a little bit more like in tune with your foot and moving with your foot. The next big part that I want to kind of call out here is you can see the plate right here and how it doesn't go in as much. This balance plate is going to do a huge thing for this. I find it funny they call it a balance plate because I'm pretty sure if they called it a cheater plate, it wouldn't be allowed. But the balance plate will obviously give you better balance, but it will push the actual pad down when your knee is not on the block, and that's huge. I have been asking for this feature since the 1S. Now, I've always said the Bauer pads play more like pro golf irons, where it doesn't really help you if you screw up, where my Optic 2s, for example, played like game improvement golf irons, where if you screw up a little bit, they'll help you. That was a big part with this. With the pillow on my Brian's pad would basically push the calf down and this section down on the ice while my knee would lift off. So the minute you're in your butterfly like this and you go to push off your leg, your knee lifts up to push. That knee is no longer on the ice. There's obviously a gap. But with a pillow down here, the calf part will stay longer on the ice and it will seal the ice better for pucks. And I'll try to show a demonstration in a little bit, but this is huge. I'm a huge fan of this. I wish this came sooner. Thank you, Bauer, for putting this in here. I really want to try Hyperlites because of this, and it makes these pads basically the most like excited I am for a pair of Bauer pads. I love these pads. I love the 2X Pros, but this is what I wanted. I even tried to put bigger ones in my ultrasonics to make it work better. So one thing Bauer has been amazing for a while is ice seal, specifically on the thigh rise. And even here, when you have the curve, you can see that the seal is really good, but just as good as compared to my 2X Pro. And when you put the weight on the knee, they're basically totally sealed here. And that's something that's important to me because I play a lot in the RVH and I use my pads to basically block out passes, or I rely on them to be there all the time. So I don't really put my stick where it technically should be because I block kind of backdoor. So that's important for me to see how that is. And at this point in the like goalie pad stage, most companies should have really good thigh rise seal at this point, even when the pad is curved like the Hyperlite kind of is, because it's possible and it's doable. And it's not something that's really hard to do anymore. So huge props for Bauer to keep maintaining that and keep doing that. So next thing I want to talk about is the pillow specifically, and it's called that balance plate. Basically what that does and what I want to show it off for is think of this as your leg, this hockey stick as your leg. When your knee is on the ground, obviously the weight is pushing the whole pad down, so you have perfect seal. Once that comes up, it starts pulling the pad up. But like this stick will be your leg, the bottom part, your shin and your calf, will be closer to the ice than your knee will. So your knee will be the first part lifting, and then the rest of the pad will follow. Now with this balance plate, it basically pushes the pad down still while your lower part of your leg is still on the ice. So right now, for example, when this is up, the knee would be up, so the pad should be pulling up, but the balance plate is still hitting the stick, forcing the stick to keep down here on the ice. So obviously once the knee starts pulling up, especially if you have a really stiff knee block like the Stabiliflex and Stabilislide, and if it's worn really tight on your knee, it's going to follow your knee and come up really quick. But the point of this balance plate, and basically the point of Brian using this pillow in their Optic 2, is that it pushes this part down with the calf when your calf is still touching it. And that's a huge thing to me. I talked about basically the 1X pads, and as well as these pads and the ultrasonic pads, in that they're basically golf like pro irons, where all the other companies are game improvement irons. And what I mean by that is pro irons, if you don't hit it right, you screw up the shot. They don't help you at all, but they give you the maximum performance. Game improvement irons, if you don't have the perfect technique and you hit it a little off center, basically the iron itself, the club itself, makes the ball go really well. Same thing with like the Optic 2 pads, where if you don't have perfect ice seal, it's still sealing down here and generally up here a little bit better than other companies or other pads, because the pad is being pushed down by those pillows. And honestly, it's basically like cheating, and it's fantastic. The amount of times that I've been in mid-transition with Brian's pads and they've been still sealed below the like shin is really awesome, and pucks just don't slide under there as much. Compared to these pads where you can see all the puck marks here, you'll always see puck marks that slide through. But with this design without that pillow, they're easier to slide through here because this doesn't push out and basically seal that. Whereas with this new plate, it does push outwards because your body is pushing it down and outwards. So it's going to give you a better balance on the ice, but it's also going to be cheating down here too. And that's pretty big for me and something I really, really like. So as a comparison on the 2X Pro, without that balance plate, the pad will just lift up more and there's nothing pushing this part down. So even though that the stick is still touching the calf down here, the whole thing is coming up because there's nothing kind of adding that space and pushing it down. Whereas the Hyperlite, you do that and it makes a big difference and it really seals there. The Hyperlite is also more balanced when you're down on the ice. I put these on really quickly just in my basement. Obviously they're different sizes and stuff, but the Hyperlite was definitely more stable in that position because of that balance plate. You can kind of see it like that too. So it's a really awesome feature and it's something that like the Brian's Optic pads had and this one has incorporated. I'm really excited about it because it's really good. So that's about it in this comparison between the 2X Pro and the new Hyperlite Goalie pads. I am pretty excited for this pad just because there's a few things I really like on it, specifically that calf pillow. I don't like the curve on it, but that's my personal preference, obviously, and I know a lot of people do want it. Obviously, the straighter one for me is what I would prefer, but the curve is there, so it is what it is. I know, again, people are using the curve more than people are using the straight one, so I get why they're doing it. I think this is going to be a really solid pad in Bauer's lineup. I think the Ultrasonic was pretty good too, but I think this one is really separating the two lines a lot more just by being softer and by having more of that, like that curve to it, and like adding the pillow to it as well. I like what they're doing. I still think the rebounds on this, they're going to be hot. It's a hard face. It's still curved underneath in parts of it. They're going to be hot. I think they should have done this a softer face or at least have that as an option. I still don't think that they have really an eFlex 5 or the Fave 12.2 like competitor in terms of what that pad offers, and that's the soft face. It's obviously a personal preference thing. For me, I like the big rebound, so this would work for me more. But I still I'm looking at a market standpoint and seeing where like one would exist and one wouldn't. And I think Bauer's kind of missing that mark on that, but they're not going to go down that route. And this is it's going to be a solid pad. I know people are going to say there's durability issues and stuff with the boots. You can see just how that boot material, like you can see the things in right there. I can't tell you if this boot break is going to rip apart. I can tell you I've used this pad more than any pad I've had in my like within the last few years, and this boot is totally fine. I know there's pros with broken boots. I know people on like GGSU bought a pair of OHL pads and the boot was broken. It's like, I can't tell you if that's gonna happen again. I can tell you I've had zero durability issues with the last three sets of Bauer pads I've worn. And obviously I don't play 6-7 times a week with the same set of pads like the pros and stuff do. And like if you're in like travel and stuff like that, you're probably on the ice practicing more than I'm playing. But I haven't had any problems with it, and I still think that these are a really solid pad that people really need to look at and really think about because they're still really, really good. And I don't think that's not really changing anything here. And I'm more interested in what this was than what this pad was. This pad wasn't really a big departure from the 1X. The boot was different, but the pad itself wasn't like hugely different. This one there's some solid changes in there, and people should definitely take a look at them. So that's about it for this video. Hopefully it was helpful. Check out my video on the gloves for the Hyperlite set. Check out the videos for the Ultrasonic compared to the Hyperlite set as well. And if this video was helpful, please reach out to Bauer on social media. Let them know. It's not Bauer Goalie, it's the other Bauer accounts. Let them know that this video was helpful and that you want to see more of them, because this set was really hard to get and someone came up clutch for me, so huge thanks for them to doing that. I greatly appreciate it, but normally like I find ways to get this, and I can't buy sets every year. Like I'm not buying a set of Hyperlites. I have my 2X Pros still, and I don't find a need to buy the Hyperlites this year, so I can't buy stuff all the time to make content on. So it's greatly appreciated that who lent these to me. But if you want to see more content like this, please reach out to Bauer and let them know. If you want to support the channel and you live in the United States, check out the link to Pure Goalie and Pure Hockey. Clicking that link, making a purchase, gives me a kickback and helps support the channel so I can buy the gear so I can actually use it and do videos like this. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, check out the link to Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon. Everything through there comes right back into the channel so I keep making videos, again, like this and making more content. Thank you very much for watching and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.